Good evening, Warriors, and welcome into another edition of the R&R Sports Report. I'm your host, Randy Isbell, and with me is...
Hello, everybody!
Robert, something's wrong with you. I don't know what's different, but I think it's the Miami Hurricane shirt, but no.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit of a different hairstyle I'm rocking for this week, so...
I want to see Robert Hagan do that hairstyle. It is actually the fantastic Erik Watkins once again helping us out and guest hosting all the way from Florida. So very excited to get his Idaho high school predictions in the second hour of the show. It's going to be great. Erik, man, how you been?
Thankfully, I haven't been too crazy. I mean, granted, well, a few of my fandoms have wanted to see me go pretty much insane, but I'm resisting for now. And yeah, as I've said on a different Facebook chats, I want to thank the Texas Rangers because if my Rays can't represent from the AL East in this postseason, no one can.
Yeah, we'll see if we do get Denny Grubb in the chat at all today. I know he's watching the game right now. From the last time I looked at a score, I don't think we're going to get the old "what's the Orioles score" from Denny anytime soon. Tough to see.
Well, I'll do everybody a favor until the Orioles score. It's currently 6-0 Texas in the bottom of the third.
It's not going well. It ruins a question I was going to ask you here soon once we get to the actual Major League Baseball topic. But obviously, as you can tell, Erik was not going to make the trip to be in studio from all the way to Florida. So we were going to test something where I was going to be in studio at least. The test did not go well. So here I am. I'm at the still to be put together home studio. Second show here that I've done that. I helped Sean do a video games to the max. You can check that out somewhere. But still working out the kinks for this. And so much so I broke my beautiful monitor to my left while setting things up today. That's going to be costly. But
Amazon Prime.
You don't drink water. That's it. That is the news. The lesson to be learned. Don't drink water because you might bump it into your monitor and things go bad. There. That's what I'm going to take from it.
Somewhere I can hear Cristiano Ronaldo screaming right now.
That's all right. He doesn't listen to the show. I can guarantee you that. Actually, I can guarantee you not enough people watch this show. They have a local predictions thing that you can do in the local newspaper. My buddy continues to be a runner-up in this thing. I think it's 3 times already this year. And it's just pigskin pick'em stuff. So high school and college and NFL, they kind of mix the 3 together. He has been on the runner-up section like 3 times this year because he has a bad tiebreaker. One of his only 2 losses was WSU. And I told him I guarantee most of the people that turned in picks picked WSU because they didn't listen to the show and have me warn you that the Pac-12 refuses to have nice things. And what happened? I even got an argument from my uncle halfway through that game when WSU took a 10-9 lead. He made sure to reach out to me and say, "Hey, look, you were wrong." Nope.
At
Pac-12 can't have nice things.
At halftime, when they announced that game day was going to Washington, not Pullman, Seattle, insult to injury.
Well, I think, honestly, the college, we'll get into more of this stuff later on in the show, but I'm sure College Game Day has been trying to build up something for when Colorado went there. Obviously, as Robert has mentioned multiple times in the show, that's a Fox game, so there's a good chance the Fox College Game Day ripoff show could be in the Palouse, and that will be just as fun. But I really thought that's what they're building up for. That's why Pat McAfee said the things he said a week ago on that show, which really got people up here riled up and just made me chuckle because we all know Pat McAfee is a big wrestling fan and he wanted to play the bad guy. He wanted to play the heel.
Classic heel turn. He did it to perfection.
Yeah, and if things worked out and they showed up at the Palouse for Colorado, Washington State, the Palouse would have so much fun for 3 hours just booing Pat McAfee, and it would have been a lot of fun. We'll see if that still happens. They're still a decent team, and Colorado obviously is the draw that they are, but them losing definitely hurts the chances of all of that happening. Rundown today's show is Robert Taylor is here, so we'll have some fun with him and the referees, I guess. I mean, I disagree with the people this time complaining about the refs, but there's the guy with the better name. He's busy. And what are you talking about? He's right here.
So, okay, I'm going to make a note. Going to have to adjust the Chiefs to my power rankings next week. I got it.
We will talk about the power rankings in the second hour, as long as with our sports-related draft. In this first hour, of course, we'll talk some Major League Baseball playoffs as they continue to fly by. We will break down some of the bigger games that happened in the National Football League. Since Erik is here with us, and Hagen and I are not the biggest hockey fans, hockey did start tonight, so we'll get Erik's takes on this upcoming season. And again, because Erik is here, there was something that happened in college football that may have been...
If you were to look up all-time bonehead plays...
the biggest bonehead play I think I have seen in 2 decades, 3 decades, lifetime. It happened on Saturday. We'll talk about that, which leads perfectly into our sports-related draft. Erik came up with a really interesting one. We will have a fun debate about that. Of course, we'll get into all of our pick'ems for high school and college as well, and so much more. But we have to start this show, I guess, the way we have started every show for the last 5 weeks, and that is talking about Monday Night Football. But how much can we really talk about that game? Because I really thought the Jets-Broncos game was the ugliest game of the week, and then the Packers and Raiders had hold my beer.
Okay.
Watch.
All right. First of all, it was terribly ugly. I completely agree with you. Josh McDaniels, if somehow through the football universe this gets to you, please hear me out. This is twice in a row you've had a situation on 4th down where it is analytically advantageous to go for it. Yes, we all know you can score 8 points on a single possession. Yes, you have a good rushing offense. It was getting better. Josh Jacobs finding his form. 4th and 1 at home, Las Vegas Knights and Stanley Cup in attendance. You go all in, James Holzhauer style, and go and salt the game away. What do? You kick a field goal. Again, getting what turned out to be the better Carlson brother more screen time. Fine by me. You're lucky that this didn't cost you 2 straight games. Very lucky. Just keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jordan Love obviously throwing an interception in that final drive. Just a horrible decision on his part. At no point did Watson have any chance to make a play on that ball. He did have his defender beat, but by the time that Love was able to see it and get the throw off, the defender had closed the gap, and then, of course, the ball was very much underthrown. So disappointing result for Green Bay there coming down the stretch. But neither offense really looked good. Josh Jacobs has really struggled this year. I know he's going through all his contract stuff. But just he does not look right. Obviously, no Aaron Jones for the Packers, but A.J. Dillon is not really able to get much going. He gets a touchdown in this game, but really not much else. I have been up and down with the Packers this year. I think you look at our power rankings, which we'll talk about in the second hour, and a lot of us kind of have the middle of the pack. And honestly, I don't know if you guys all agree with my thoughts on it, but this is just a team kind of like the Washington Commanders, right? Every week I go, I have no idea. And then one week I'm like, they're not good. And then they go out and get a win. And then I go, all right, well, maybe they're better than I thought. And then they get blown out. So I think the Commanders and Packers are very much in that same camp of I don't know.
Exactly. And what I have seen this season, there is an incredible amount of mid. Teams that should not be mid, you did not expect to be mid, they are mid. And realistically, if you look at the beginning of the season and you look at now, you would expect the Commanders and Packers to be in that situation, and here we are. I didn't think too highly of them or either team in their respective divisions, and thus far, outside of a couple outlying performances, they both seem to prove me right. Now, granted, I wish I had applied that logic in picking Las Vegas last night instead of Green Bay, but things happen, and well, I have a terrible week. But nah.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. My picks this whole year. Let's just focus on my high school and my college picks because those have been going fantastic. The NFL picks, not so much. Any game that has a quick turnaround late in the contest and flips whoever won that game, it always goes against me. Hagen and I did have two games picked differently, and one of them was exactly that, Atlanta with the game-winning field goal that cost me my pick with Houston. But that's neither here nor there. So both teams now 2-3, both the Packers and the Raiders. I think we are both looking at both teams are on the outside looking in as far as who we think will make the postseason. But from what we've seen through 5 weeks, if you had to pick one, which of these two teams would you put your whatever little money you would want to put on it to go on a playoff run?
I would honestly look at the Packers because, again, you look at the teams around them that are imploding. You still got the Bears. You still got the Vikings. And outside of your really dominant, top-heavy teams in the NFC, San Francisco and Philadelphia, there's a lot of teams that you can catch. Detroit, I'm keeping an eye on them. They can be still to that level of ascendancy, but not quite there yet. I think the run is a little bit easier for Green Bay, whereas with Vegas, we see the AFC. We see the Chiefs. We still see the Bills. We see the Dolphins. We see the Jaguars. You can rattle off 7 teams to lock up your spots right there, and you don't see Vegas even thinking about approaching any of them.
No, and I think that is exactly why I don't think either of these two teams are going to make the postseason. I agree with you where the Packers have the easier situation because it is a lot tougher to lock in 7 teams. So, I mean, obviously you're going to put in Philadelphia and Detroit. You're going to put in San Francisco. Atlanta is an interesting team. The Saints are an interesting team. Tampa Bay is better than we think. So all of a sudden, when we were doing our preseason picks, we were going, well, one team out of the NFC South. Now there could be 2. Dallas, even though they got completely destroyed on Sunday Night Football, we'll talk about that. I still got to believe that they're a better team than the Packers right now. So you're getting close to that 7 route. You look at some of the games that they have, and there's still a lot of games in front of them. Obviously, losing to the Lions already this year at home hurts, but you still get 2 games with the Vikings. You get another game with the Bears. That'll be interesting. But I'll tell you what, looking at the Giants' schedule over the next few weeks, I don't think this is a playoff team, but they could start putting themselves in that playoff contention for a little bit before they hit that last section of their schedule. That'll definitely hurt, but they're at Chicago, or excuse me, they host New England next week, who that team looks completely horrible. They're at Chicago, who, I mean, if they play like Thursday, can definitely give them a game, but I'm still not fully sold on them. We'll give them a loss at Detroit, and then they get the 2 New York teams. So you could honestly say that the Raiders will go 4-1 in their next 5 games, and I won't throw the biggest argument at you. However, then it's Dolphins, Chiefs, Chargers, Chiefs again. So then that is going to implode. But Raiders, I think, are going to have the better next few weeks. Packers have the better situation. But like I said, neither team is going to make the postseason this year.
And once we really you mapped out pretty much everything leading towards Thanksgiving. Once you get to that Thanksgiving cutoff, yes, Raiders fans are going to have hope. But at the same time, look at where they would be versus potentially where a lot of the playoff competition would be. You know it's going to go off the rails and fast. Whereas with Green Bay, fine, they have a little bit of a rough patch, but then all of a sudden, hey, November, December, closing out the calendar year, you're like, maybe you can map out some of those scenarios.
It's an interesting thing. So we're seeing some trades start to trickle through the NFL, and the trade deadline's still 3-4 weeks away, and the deadline has been more interesting in the National Football League over the last couple of years than it was for decades. But that's where I'm curious with the Raiders, with somebody like Davante Adams, who there's teams out there that are begging for wide receiver help if they stumble against these rough teams, and you look at that back half of that schedule that they have, that would be an amazing piece to move. So I'll just throw it out to you right now. Who is more likely to move? Davante Adams from the Raiders or Kirk Cousins for the Vikings?
I'm going to be honest. Given the salary, given the expectations, given the fact that they can't hold on to the ball to save their lives, I think Kirk Cousins is more likely to be moved. I mean, we just mapped out their schedule. You would have to think Mark Davis, as you get to that trade deadline, it's like, all right, we're near 500, falling into that fool's gold, thinking, hey, okay, we may have something brewing, may have that chance. But you look at Minnesota, they're already just a one-win team. Do you really see them getting anywhere close in the next month? I don't. They lose the close games. They can't hold on to the ball. Cousins doesn't even have his famous 1 o'clock hoodoo anymore. That's gone. So what is there left?
Yeah, and Justin Jefferson's now on the IR, so he's going to miss at least the next 4 games. And I think it was Matthew Berry I saw on Twitter basically bring it up, and it's like, this could be a Cooper Kupp situation where Jefferson does believe he'll be back after that 4-game stint. But if the Vikings say go 1-3 or 0-4 in that stint, does he really want to come back to a team that has no chance? So it could be really interesting there, especially if they do move Kirk Cousins. All right, let's move to the Major League Baseball playoffs. And it's a little bit late on this discussion, but this is what happens when you have 1 week. But we do have to talk about it because you are a Tampa Bay Rays fan, and they were part of that wild card round that had no drama in it. 4 series, 4 2-game sweeps. Is that good or bad for baseball?
It's not the best. I mean, you have your advantage of more teams are in it. More upsets happen. More of these fandoms like say, hey, we can get in and make a run. I think that's where the benefit is, because if you just had all of your top seeds go ahead and complete the sweeps, then what would be the point? And you already have people clamoring about, oh, go back to 1 wild card or 1 game or what have you. But the fact that you have Texas, you have Arizona, these teams that you think, okay, they could run into a wall pretty early on, advance and are now thriving, it's somewhat of a bad look, but it's going to be a better look, especially the way that these division series are carrying out.
Yeah, I've never been the biggest fan of expanding the playoffs. I've been kind of against it. I do like the best of 3 series where they're all at the home team's field. So it does kind of feel like it's just an extra series that these teams are playing, because this is exactly what you do during the regular season. You play 3 games at one ballpark and you go from there. So I do like how quick everything goes. I like that they're not stretching it out. Obviously, that would hurt the teams that do get the bye. And as you said, 2 of the home teams swept and 2 of the teams on the road swept. So that makes it a bit more interesting as well. Disappointing we did not see any game 3s in that wild card, just for the drama of it. And honestly, the way the ALDS is going right now, I don't know if we're going to see any game 5s. There's 1 series I think we might, but I'll just ask you the question right now because obviously Texas is taking care of business. I believe it's still 6-0. I just had looked and then I brought up the bracket. I don't think it's changed. But so Texas right now is a few innings away. It is bottom of the fourth inning. Rangers up 6-0. I was going to ask you before the show, before the Rangers are messing this up, who had the better chance of making it a comeback, the Orioles or the Dodgers? So I'll just switch it out. Do the Dodgers have any chance of making the comeback against the Diamondbacks?
I don't think so. I would love to say yes, and I would have picked the Dodgers easily. The experience, issues with pitching, especially with Kershaw, but you thought this is a team that's been there before, and that's why I would have picked against the Orioles, because for as good of a regular season that they've had, they haven't been there before. Texas has, but the fact that Arizona is carrying so much momentum, they lifted the mystique of Chavez Ravine. No, Arizona's like, hey, we got to the NLCS before. It's been a little while. We want to go back and do it again. And they're just going to go ahead and put their foot down.
First, on the Texas side, I really thought they were going to be a dangerous team once we got into the playoffs. Because what has been their biggest issue in the regular season? It was the bullpen. In a way, you can hide some of those bullpen issues. Part of it is Jose Leclerc came back, and he has looked really good over the last few weeks. They did win that first game 3-2 and brought in 3 relievers in the 7th, 8th, and 9th innings. Suarez, Chapman, and Leclerc. None of them were able to work a clean 1, 2, 3 inning. Chapman again walks 2 batters and barely gets out of it. He has been a train wreck over the last 2 months. But you can hide some bullpen woes by using some of your starting pitching in those bullpen situations. And I think Texas has the firepower that makes it really difficult to shut that team down. Obviously, Tampa Bay got a whiff of that, and now you're seeing Baltimore kind of run into that issue as well. And Hagan and I multiple times said that we really thought the Orioles were a year ahead of schedule, where we thought they were going to be a wild card team and be pretty good, but not this dominant yet. So while it's not great for them this year to possibly get swept here in the ALDS, it's such a young team to get that postseason experience under their belt. It's a team that I know I am, and I'm pretty sure you are very scared to have to deal with in the AL East for years to come.
Absolutely, because you look at how they constructed the season and you look at their expected win-loss. You hit it perfectly. They're a year ahead of schedule. They incredibly overperformed. But at the same time, if you look at this overperformance, say they take an expected step back next year, that's still 90 wins. That is still right in contention. We're right at it with them again next year. So yes, they are creating a little bit of a new order in the AL East. And yes, I am worried. It's going to be fun to actually beat them next year and get some semblance of revenge. But hey, it'll be earned.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even though it looks like Baltimore is about to get bounced here from these playoffs, it's going to be interesting to see where they come from years from now. It is starting to look like it's going to be an AL West only ALCS coming up as the Astros completely dominated the Twins earlier today. They won that game 9-1. Interesting, through these 3 games, there's been 0 lead changes. Somebody jumps out early, usually in that first inning. I think the Astros scored multiple innings in the first inning today, and you're just no coming back. I give credit to Christian Javier, who was fantastic on the bump, does walk 5 batters, but strikes out 9, gave up just the 1 hit. Minnesota, give them credit. They were finally able to get that losing streak off their back. They win a series, but they just, again, you talk about the postseason experience, man. And that's Houston in a nutshell. This is a team that we continue to hope that somebody will finally be able to knock them off the mountain, and they're just that good. And they have so many people that have had years and years of experience in postseason baseball. They brought back Verlander. Just things look so good for Houston. So how excited are you for an Astros Rangers ALCS?
As long as the Rangers win, I'll be fine. That's all I ask. Texas, You heard it. You go ahead. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. Just finish the job. Save all of us, please.
Yeah, in the National League, again, we'll talk about Arizona kind of shocking the world right now, winning their first 2 games against the Dodgers, and basically they're doing it against the starting pitching. Clayton Kershaw turned back into postseason Kershaw in the worst way. Gave up 6 runs and he got an out, a single out. I'm pretty sure his worst performance in a really rough postseason career for Kershaw. And then Bobby Miller, not much better, gave up 3 runs yesterday while only getting 5 outs. So not only are the Dodgers down 2 games to none, they have burnt through a ton of bullpen pitching. The Diamondbacks very well set. We'll see what Lance Lynn is able to do. However, the Dodgers do have experience. So I will ask you this. If the Dodgers win tomorrow, do you think that a little bit of doubt starts creeping into Arizona's heads?
A tiny bit, because, as I said, they slayed Dodger Stadium. Great. Now you're at home. You've got 2 chances on your field to go ahead and finish the job. If the Dodgers win that first one, they're like, okay, 1 down, 2 to go. We can do this again. And if I'm on that D-backs team, I would worry a bit. That psychology starts kicking in. So if they jump on them early, which they need to do, fine. But especially if it's one of those close ones, 1-run game decided on something even as crazy as we saw the ending of the Phillies Braves. If it's something like that and the Dodgers prevail, that could be exactly what they need to pull a reverse sweep.
So I'll ask you exactly that. Go to the Phillies Braves series. Phillies win the first game 3-0, completely dominate that game, shut down that awesome offense for Atlanta. They jump out again 4-0 through 5 innings. It looks like once again they're going to just shut down Atlanta, and it just shows, oh, we're in the division with them. We know how to pitch them. And they gave up a run in the 6th, a couple more runs in the 7th, and then the big 2-run home run by Austin Riley. So not only did you blow a lead, and now instead of being up 2-0, it's 1-1, but all the momentum is on this Atlanta team, who has been the best team in baseball all year. So did Atlanta just win that series in that 3-inning stretch?
Absolutely. You talk about how they did offensively. They went to what worked. Home run records. What do? Bang. They bring the power where Philadelphia didn't. And of course, while everybody's saying, hey, Bell go dong, it has to go dong all the time. And when you know you have got such communication and savvy to combine that offense, but for it to hold, doubling up Bryce Harper from the track, the first ever double play involving an outfielder to end a postseason game. I'm sorry if I'm Atlanta and saying, look at what we can do. Going to Citizens Bank Park is nothing to us. Let's go.
So Atlanta, Texas World Series, is that what we're both hoping for at this point?
I'm crossing my fingers.
My fingers. If I had to predict, I'd say Houston, Atlanta would be in the World Series, but I can't. I can't do it. I can't go that route. All right, let's go back to the National Football League and look at some of the bigger games over the weekend, and we have to go right to Sunday night football. I don't know if Chris is still listening, but we all made fun of him for weeks for putting Dallas at like 25th in his power rankings. All of us moved them down multiple spots. Chris moved them down 1 spot because he already has them where he thinks that they belong. Is he correct here? Because they really have not played anybody all year. This was their big test, and they got completely spanked.
I don't think he's exact. I don't think you're exactly right, Chris, but I'm not saying you're far off. I'll get into this more later on as we discuss the power rankings in depth. Mm-hmm. Dallas is one of those teams that I have circled that's set to plummet. Yes, you had a fantastic primetime performance against the Giants, but it's the Giants. We see where they are. That was expected. you go in, yes, you have the historical rivalry. They showed all the pictures from the NFC Championship games in the 80s and 90s and all the Hall of Famers. You know you have this as your shining moment early on. You know you want to compete even though the Niners are a juggernaut, but 3 interceptions from Prescott, George Kittle tearing your defense apart like you're ripping through paper. No, this is a terrible look. I'm not going to have you crater yet, but dear Jeebus, you're close. You're heading to that cliff.
So while before we look ahead for Dallas and for San Francisco, I'm curious your takes there. Just look at some of these numbers that came out of Sunday Night Football. San Francisco had 25 first downs. Dallas had 8 first downs in the whole game. Total yards, San Francisco 421. Dallas only had 197. Time of possession was 37 minutes to 22. Dallas in their first 4 drives went 3 and out, 3 and out. They fumbled on the first play to avoid a 3 and out, and then they went 3 and out again. San Francisco was able to score in their first 3 drives of the second half. That is including the 3 interceptions that Prescott threw in 3 consecutive drives. Brock Purdy continues to be slightly underrated at this point with what he continues to do. 17 to 24, 252 and 4 touchdowns. I know the talent around him is ridiculous. It's always a different person, it seems like, for this team. Ayuk had a great first game. Deebo Samuel had a big game in there. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey continues to be awesome. And then, like you said, George Kittle. He only had 3 receptions, but they all ended up in the end zone for that game. So just a brutal game. But I'm going to look ahead now for both of these two teams. So we're talking about Dallas, where you think they have not cratered yet, but they could.
Mm-hmm.
So you look ahead at their schedule, and it's not much easier. I'm not going to say the Chargers are on the level of the 49ers, but it's another primetime game. It's against a Chargers team who's coming off a bye, and they're going to have Austin Eckler back. That is not a great bounce back game, I think, if you're Dallas.
Especially offensively, because this is a Chargers team that's very vulnerable in shootouts. We talk about their front 4. Yes, Khalil Mack had one huge performance against Vegas, but that's been about it. So you know if you can score 28, 30, 31 points, you can hang in there. I don't think that Dallas is at the point right now where they can immediately turn this around and score 31 points. Then what? That's one of those traps to where if the Chargers have the ball last in a 2, 3, 4 minute situation, I can trust them to run out the clock, get the score they need, than I do Dallas at this point.
Yeah, and then the Cowboys get a bye week, and then they host the Rams, and then they're at Philadelphia. So Dallas 1-2 maybe in their next 3 weeks. If they go, that's a tough schedule, but if they go 1-2 in those next 3 weeks, that would put them at 500, 4-4. How much would the sky be falling for Dallas fans at that point?
It wouldn't be falling yet because, again, still the NFC. The division would be out of the question, but there's so much competition for those wild card spots that at 4-4, you make a couple tweaks here, you can be in the running. But if they do go 0-3, which I see is more than realistic, 3-5, sky is falling, Jerry Jones is freaking out, all chaos. I'm telling you.
All right, now quickly on the San Francisco side, 5-0, obviously, as are the Philadelphia Eagles. And we can look at the Eagles' schedule too if you want. But I'm going to go down, and you just tell me win or loss. I'm curious where you finally give the 49ers their first loss of the year, because I think it could be a while.
All right.
They're at Cleveland next week.
Win.
At Minnesota.
Win.
They host the Bengals, who Burrow finally looked like Burrow-esque last week.
Win.
Then a bye week. That's not a loss, so we'll go on. At your Jacksonville Jaguars after the bye week.
That's where, given history and how Jaguars play these teams in Florida, and remembering what happened the last time we went out west, that right there, not to have full-on Homer bias, but that's the first one that I would circle, where it's like, if they can get past the Jags, the run could continue. I think that's the vulnerability.
I think I would agree with you if they didn't have a bye week right before. Obviously, injuries can mess with this completely, but then they host Tampa Bay, who has been sneaky good, but I would say San Francisco wins that game
Easily.
And then their toughest stretch in my mind, back-to-back weeks on the road at Seattle, which is divisional game on the road. The Seahawks continue to have that home field advantage, and that rivalry is well documented. And then they're at Philadelphia, which could be an NFC East or NFC Championship game preview. So to me, that's a tough 4-game stretch for them if you add in at Jacksonville and Tampa Bay. So there's a good 4-game run for the Cowboys. Real quick, let's look at the Eagles' schedule, see if they somehow go on this same run. I'll do the same thing for you here. So they are at the New York Jets this week.
Win.
That's a
Sorry.
win. No, I'll talk about the Jets here in a second. I'm totally fine with it. Then they host the Miami Dolphins Sunday Night Football. That is so awesome.
They're gonna win, but expect that to be a quick game, because I think even with the prolific passing that we've seen, the greatest offense to start a season yardage-wise ever, they're going to both, Philadelphia and Miami, definitely want to utilize the ground game. Don't be surprised if at 8:15 kickoff, if by 10:45 Eastern, you're at the last couple of plays of the game.
All right, so you give them a win there. How about at the Commanders?
Win.
Guess what? That's exactly where I'm giving the Eagles their first loss. It happened last year. The Commanders, for whatever reason, at home, like to screw up people's winning streaks. They are not a sexy team. They're not a good team, but they come up in division games. They're going to get that win.
Okay, but hear me out. We saw what happened at Lincoln Financial Field. Yes, Washington, with all of their moxie, the last-second touchdown, forcing overtime, all this and that. I give them a lot of credit in my blurb. That should not have been that close. Do you really think the Eagles, and imagine this, they go on these runs, you're all going to be talking about every pundit, every station, that matchup with San Francisco. Do you really think Philadelphia is going to let what happened to them happen again? I don't think so. I think San Francisco is more likely to slip up in the week or two leading up to that game to mess up the narrative than Philadelphia is.
But I will say this, this is weeks before the 49ers game, and this is where I think they could actually slip up against the Commanders, even though it has happened before, and their first game went to overtime. So just real quick, the next stretch for the Eagles is insane to me. So they host the Commanders. The week after that, they're at Dallas. They go on a bye week. Then they're at Kansas City. They host Buffalo, and they host San Francisco. So if you're ever going to overlook a team, it's going to be Washington before that 4-game stretch. After that 4-game stretch, they're at Dallas and they're at Seattle. We all talked about what the Jets had to go through for the first 6 weeks. That 6-game stretch with a bye week in the middle of it is the most brutal thing I've seen.
It's a murderer's row, don't get me wrong, but and again, feel free to come back to this show, come back, tweet at me if everything this happens, but with those other brutal games, they'll be more like, okay, we lost here, fine.
Yep.
We can't let Washington scare us again.
We will see where that goes. All right, some quick hits here in the National Football League. Just kind of your quick take on all of these things. Did Buffalo make a mistake going to London so late in the week?
Absolutely. Jet lag, time zone difference, and you're leaving 50 hours before kickoff.
Especially with
Total
Jacksonville
mistake.
being there the week before. Yep,
Oh,
that was mind blowing. And by the way, Baltimore's already in London for their game this week. Could New England be in a battle for the first overall pick?
yes. I've had many conversations about this. For as good of a defensive guru that Belichick has been, he doesn't show it with drafting, doesn't show it on the field. This is an offensively tuned and preferred NFL. Offense has never been his thing. It's coming back to bite him. He sees how the other half lives now.
For sure. God, that game with the Jets against them just haunts me. Because the Jets would be looking really good if they could have just won against that garbage team, but they can never beat Bill. You worried about Baltimore yet?
Oh, I mean, it's a little bit of a conundrum. Yes, with all of their injuries. Yes, that huge play to Pickens and everything against Pittsburgh. And not yet, but there's a tiny voice in my head about them. A tiny voice.
By the way, I don't know how PFF gets all of their formulas, but how is Lamar Jackson the highest rated quarterback this week?
I have no idea. I mean, having gone through some things in a similar environment to PFF and how detailed, very detailed they are, even down to everything in formations, I would need to see a little bit of the algorithm. Open up the black box, PFF, for me, please. I can go through the numbers because I'm not getting it.
Cincinnati back yet? Did you like what you saw from Burrow? Do you believe in that yet?
I do. I did. And again, with my power rankings, we'll talk about. This is why I didn't move them down too far, because I'm like, Burrow's going to get better. His leg, calf, ankle, all of that's going to heal up, and you'll see now you're starting to. This is where it begins.
Yeah, you've been very consistent. Still had them in the top 10. I was the only one to join you with them back in the top 10 this week, so I 100% agree with you. Who would you name the offensive rookie of the year so far? CJ Stroud or Devin Achane?
CJ Stroud. I, having dealt with him already as a Jaguars fan, as much as I love Devon Achane, sorry, Mike Allstott, he is the A-Train now. You will have to deal with that. Nobody expected with that total garbage offensive line and putting together peanuts and packing tape in Houston for them to assemble this sort of a start to their season, and that's all in the hands of number 7.
Yeah, he's still not throwing an interception this year, right?
He broke Dak Prescott's record, most consecutive passes without an interception to start the career.
Yeah, he's been awesome. Achane has been phenomenal. What a home run hitting back he is. Unfortunately, it looks like he may land on the IR. He is going to miss at least a couple of weeks, but just insane to me. In a game and a half less than Christian McCaffrey, he was like 30 yards behind him for the leading rusher total. Just absolutely insane what he is able to do. So Breece Hall, let's go to my New York Jets, ran the ball 22 times. They finally took the training wheels back off of Hall, and the Jets go out and get the big win against Denver, and it was an ugly game. Let's just be honest. But for the Jets, is this that big piece to the puzzle that they were looking for to possibly be an okay team? I still don't think they're a contending team in the AFC. We talked how tough that conference is. They're almost through this 6-game stretch of death. But is this the piece that really puts what the Jets have been trying to do together?
Absolutely. This is why you brought in Dalvin Cook, solidify the run game. This is why you were waiting to have something to take the pressure off Zach Wilson. As much as he still has the aura of Rodgers around him, still needs that time. The more you can have it out of his hands and allow him to be effective, the better your chances are. Brees Hall, welcome back. You should be celebrating. This is a huge catalyst.
The moment he broke off that touchdown run in the third quarter, I wanted them to sit him the rest of the game. I felt deja vu. He broke off a big touchdown run at the beginning of their game against Denver last year, and then he tore his ACL. I was like, just get him off the field. Don't let him around. Unfortunately, there was some deja vu for the Jets at Mile High. It just happened to be on the offensive line, as Vera Tucker, who ended his season in Denver last year, tore his Achilles heel on Sunday at Denver. So back-to-back seasons, his season ends on that field. Just rough to see, especially for an offensive line for the Jets that we all know is just, it's not good. Let's get to our NFL weekly awards, and Robert did give us his picks as well. I laughed when he stole your pick.
Yeah.
And you were nice enough to switch it. I flipped him crap about it. I go, that was nice job bullying Erik out of his pick, but you were nice enough to flip. So Robert does take DJ Moore, 8 receptions, 230 yards, and 3 touchdowns on Thursday Night Football. What a big coming out party for him with the Bears. He was finally able to get things going with Chicago. That was supposed to be the big 1-2 punch, and we just have not seen it yet. Justin Fields finally was able to find his main target. We'll see if that helps Chicago get their season turned around, because it's not going to be the running game because they've lost everybody on that side. I went with Jamar Chase, talk about another player that really finally got his season going. 15 receptions for 192 yards and 3 touchdowns as well. Who do you got?
I did go homer for this one. I figure if there's already going to be some gimmick infringement with stealing picks, I might as well do more kickoff gimmick infringement. Go big or go homer. Travis Etienne. I mean, for as decent as we were against the Bills, the first half was fairly bleh. I admit that. But 26 carries, 136 yards, and those 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to really keep our foot on the gas. That's what I have been waiting for all season. Travis, thank you. Let's keep it going.
Defensive player of the week. Robert went with Max Crosby from that Monday Night Football game for the Raiders. He was all over the place. It seemed like every play he was a part of. He doesn't only end up with 5 tackles and 1 sack, but he was just in the backfield all game long. For me, TJ Watt for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 2 sacks, 2 pass deflections, and a forced fumble. Oh, yeah, and his finger's basically off. He dislocated it, put it back kind of into place and taped it up a little bit. And reports are that he's going to need surgery after the year, or he's going to look like Booger McFarland.
Oh, hopefully plays better than Booger, continues to. But that's beside the point. For me, we talked about the Sunday night beatdown. I went with Fred Warner. Yes, only 8 tackles and a sack. But if you look, you saw him just like Max Crosby for the Raiders. You saw Fred Warner everywhere in that Niners defense. Deflected a pass, got in Prescott's face, had a quarterback hit. I mean, just bam, bam, constant. He's here. He's there. They had no answer for him, the Cowboys. So, my defensive player of the week, hands down.
And don't forget, we will be back talking NFL in the second hour when we get into the power rankings and break all of that down. But real quick, Thursday night football, it's a football game. I don't know if it's going to be a good football game, but it's a football game. That Denver is at Kansas City.
I'm keeping this friendly. Thursday night F this. That's what it is officially nicknamed.
I don't even know if that's PG.
Yeah, we're all going Chiefs. Surprise, surprise. Primetime games this week. Monday Night Football is good. The other two, you could go do something else.
Thankfully, I've got some stuff that I could catch up on or some work that I could be doing for a data analysis class I'm taking. I could work on quite a bit in those 3 hours.
All right, these next 10 minutes are exactly why we brought Erik Watkins on the show. So, Erik, I'm going to ask you first. Do you want to rant with the first topic or the second topic?
Okay, because I have something for this. This is the first topic. Now, for those who are looking visually, I will explain for those.
It's all visually today. We're not on that. We don't have. The
okay. Yes, you see how I'm holding this ball.
Yes.
You see this.
Yes.
Here in a key game where you have the lead, this is exactly what you do with the ball. Is it that hard, Mario? This isn't Oregon. This, taking a knee. It's called victory formation for a reason. It's been around since 1978.
Can I ask the professor something? This is a tough lesson. But I thought we banned kneeling at football games a couple years ago with Colin Kaepernick.
No, different.
Maybe that's what Miami was thinking. We can't kneel at football games anymore.
If you're holding the ball and you're not on the sideline, that is still acceptable. We've established this.
So for those that don't know what we're talking about, the Miami Hurricanes, was it Georgia Tech you guys were playing? Yeah. They had the ball with under a minute to go. All they had to do was hike the ball, as Erik said, kneel down. They win the game. The commentators, if you watch this clip, as they're breaking formation, are going, what are they doing? Why aren't they just kneeling this ball? They hand it off. The runner goes through the line, and he loses the football. And then, to add on top of it, a couple plays later, which is a Hail Mary situation, nobody on Miami plays prevent defense, and they allow a receiver to go by 3 of them and made a wide open catch for the touchdown. It was the most bizarre minute and a half I've ever seen.
And here's the rub. Jaguars fans, I still hear you. I'm with you. Miles Jack was down. Guess what? On that play, and I saw this today, photographers at the game had wonderful shots right at the moment of the fumble. Chaney was actually down. It shouldn't have even been ruled a fumble to begin with.
But you know what? You don't kneel the football when you're supposed to kneel the football. If he would have hit the ground, got up, and fumbled the ball, handing it to the referee would have still called it a fumble, because what are you doing making that decision?
I'm not going to disagree with you. This is shades of 2005. Georgia Tech hoodoo, self-inflicted. Oh, at least they're still nice enough to give us North Carolina in prime time on Saturday.
We will talk about that in the second hour. That is part of our prediction group, which I don't know if you've officially made your picks. It'll be fun to get your actual picks here in a little bit. So that's good. I don't put them in now. You're good.
Okay.
All
right.
Another reason why we have Erik on this show, other than he's been a long-time friend of ours and been a part of a lot of stuff, is, again, as I said at the top of the show, hockey is a great sport. Hagen and I just don't watch it enough to talk about it a lot. Here, we've gotten into Aussie Rules football. That's why we talk about it. At the end of every show, Erik is a big part of that group. Erik and I have had several conversations. I'm just trying to stretch as Erik is having an on-screen change going on at the moment. But it is the opening day of the National Hockey League. There he goes. Get his hockey stuff in there. Tampa Bay's already beat Nashville 5-3. Pittsburgh right now with a 2-1 lead over the Blackhawks, and still to come, they have the Kraken are playing against the Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights.
The banner shall be raised.
So Erik, just give us a couple of minute preview of what to expect on the National Hockey League and why I should be tuning in to ESPN Plus and watching a lot more hockey this year.
Number 1, Frozen Frenzy. For all of you who love NFL Red Zone and 7 hours of commercial-free football. ESPN made the announcement. They are doing that similar for the NHL this season.
Awesome.
I believe ESPN2, October 24th, all 32 teams will be in action that night. If you're going to tune in for that.
That honestly, real quick, that's what I love to see. It's a little more difficult, I think, for hockey to be able to flip back and forth because it's not okay who's closest to scoring because it's just action packed. But that's going to be great. I really hope they go crazy, multi-box, and break things down. Baseball is doing this now. It's what the big inning on MLB TV. I've absolutely loved that. I switch that on all the time. That is just the future of sports. Is just give us everything all at once and overload our brains.
Absolutely. The minute that I saw the tweet about that, I am like, I am here for it. I will be tuning in as Texas just hit a home run. So it's going to be fantastic. And for you in particular, I mentioned this specifically as we talked in the lead up to the show. I know you were desiring to be a Kraken fan dealing with the blackouts. Stick with them for this season because with everything and how they're set up, yes, Philip Grubauer in goal. Don't be surprised if you make another playoff run. I see you taking a mild step back, maybe doing a little bit worse in the second round, maybe a first round exit, but you're building something special. You're going to be in playoff contention. The West, you've got Edmonton, maybe Calgary, you've got Vegas. Can they repeat? The West is going to be the conference to watch this year because with them, Colorado, a couple of other teams, that is going to be a little bit top heavy, but super competitive. And as far as with names, Ovechkin, 72 goals away from Wayne Gretzky's record.
That's crazy.
How close is he going to get this year? If he finishes in the 40s, you're going to have that whole countdown for 24, 25, how he gets there. Connor Bedard, number 1 overall pick, already with a pretty good performance against his idol, Sidney Crosby, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Can he really help live up to the hype and have that Chicago rebuild? My Panthers, don't count us out after that Stanley Cup final loss. It's going to be tough. Everybody's looking at teams like Toronto in the Atlantic, Carolina in the Metro. We're still here. We're still going to be here. And another big storyline, not just with Toronto, can they get over the hump? How are the Bruins going to bounce back? Record-breaking season only to be a meme and fall flat on their face. There's going to be so much to watch this year. I can't wait.
Absolutely excited. I'm happy the Kraken will be on ESPN. They start here in about 30 minutes, so I will tune that in once we get done with the show and watch it again. They're just on Root, and Root is not on anything. So, like, Root is fighting with everybody still. I mean, if you ask Hagen and his Mariners, it's been a headache. So we will get into it enough hockey, get to football. We are not going to get quite back to football. A little bit. We'll get into our sports-related draft. You are watching the RNR Sports Report right here on our Facebook and YouTube pages. We'll be back in studio next week with Hagen and I. Again, we were hoping to be in studio and get the audio version up. I'm going to mute you here real quick, Erik, so while you get through your change. But Robert and I will be back into it. Well, you said football, and Erik heard strip changing. So that's where we're at. He's just losing layers of clothing. So we'll be back in studio. Other programming note, Halloween does land on a Tuesday. Hagen and I obviously both have families with little ones. So we are going to have a Monday night show, October 30th. We'll get all the details in there. It's possible that we will just wait for Monday Night Football to end and then do the show right after it. Obviously, that gets a little bit of a hectic feel because we do all the power rankings and stuff as well. But I think it would be good to just sit down and talk a lot of football right after Monday Night Football there and have fun. So we will officially announce stuff next week once we get all that set up, but that's kind of where we're at the rest of the month. All right, now that Erik is through change number 2, let's get into the sports-related draft. And Erik had a lot of fun coming up with his topic, so I will let him introduce it.
Now, Robert Taylor, I see your comment. Football. You did not specify what code of football, good sir. So technically, this still counts. Now, as Randy mentioned, we are humongous Aussie Rules football fans here on the show. And last week, the guys talked about it a bit. You had their grand final. Thrilling match. Hooray to Collingwood. I had Brisbane winning. Hey, I'm willing to take an L on that. But the city of Brisbane, Bris Vegas as they call it in Australia, had a double chance because there are 2 major codes of football in Australia, Aussie Rules and Rugby League. It just so happened that Brisbane has a team in each code. Brisbane Lions in the AFL, the vaunted juggernaut Brisbane Broncos in the NRL. Both of their teams made their grand finals. It was a huge celebration. Both teams went on to lose. Collingwood winning a heartbreaker, the Penrith Panthers coming from behind to win a 2-point thriller in Sydney. So I thought to myself, Brisbane had a double whammy, as it were. So I thought, what are some of the best double whammies, bad luck by teams and cities and matchups that have occurred in the history of sport? I sent it to Randy. He was impressed. Here we are.
So yeah, basically players, teams, cities that have had double mistakes, double losses, double whammies, as Erik likes to say. So Erik picked the topic. I get the first pick, and again, I commended Erik because there's a lot of times we'll come up with a sports related draft, and there's a list somewhere that you can find on the internet that we can kind of pick and choose from and find the stuff that we like. Sometimes multiple lists that you can find different things and then really have a lot of fun with. There's nothing for this, which made it a lot of fun. So I went with the first pick. So I wasn't fully set on where Erik wanted to go with this. And I really like this double blunder, this double whammy for one Leon Lett. If nobody knows him, he was from a long time ago, back in the big Dallas Cowboy dynasty of the 90s. But he had 2 plays that you go back and watch top 20 NFL blunders of all time. He's on there twice. And he's on there twice.
The king of football follies.
Both from the calendar year of 1993. Now, it was not in the same season, but it was in the same calendar year. In the Super Bowl, Dallas is just blowing out Buffalo. One of the many times that the Bills lost the Super Bowl, they lost a record 4 straight times. But Dallas is completely destroying them. A fumble occurs on the play. Leon Lett picks it up. Thinks he has this great touchdown, drops the ball to his side, is showboating, and here comes Don. Is it Don Beebe?
Yep, Don Beebe.
Don Beebe comes from his right side, knocks it out of bounds. Fumble into the end zone means Buffalo gets the football back. In the end, it does not matter because the Cowboys were dominating, but just one of those follies that you will remember. And then go from January. That's before the Super Bowl got pushed into February. So go from January of 1993 all the way to November, Thanksgiving Day. They're taking on Miami. I want to say it snowed in Dallas, which was weird because they had the opening of the old stadium. So there's snow on this turf, which made it a complete mess. Miami going for the game-winning field goal. It gets blocked. Everyone is celebrating the Dallas win, except Miami is also celebrating the play because Leon Lett came sliding in there to recover the blocked fumble. And this is why I picked him with my first pick, is because I can't remember the color commentator's name, but he went, "Oh no, Leon Lett, not again!" Like basically not again. Like this poor guy just made another. I got to do it again. The old.
If you were to look up all-time bonehead plays,
Leon Lett. So a double blunder for Lett. So he is my first pick.
And I have to say, wasn't expecting that, but I saw that and I was like, very well done. Very, very well done.
Thank you.
So, for my first pick, I'm pulling a Hagen here because I have a feeling he would have thought about this too. The year is 1948.
Hagen was a junior in high school.
It was a different time in America. Hagen was a young boy, probably going out to the parks and seeing these games. We were just coming out of the war a few years ago, and this is when Cleveland baseball was on top. You had Bob Feller, great historic lineup, but you thought, yes, but they're still Cleveland. You've got not one, but two fantastic teams in Boston. Everybody's getting ready for them to face off in the World Series. And in the first ever one-game playoff in the American League, Cleveland went up against the Red Sox. You think, all right, this is just a little bit of a hurdle, no big deal. Cleveland wins. They take the pennant. What did they do? They faced the Braves in the World Series. Congratulations, they go on and win the title. The city of Boston had not one but two cracks at taking home the championship at the end of that season. In the end, the trophy went to the Midwest.
Yeah, obviously back when the Braves were part of Boston, so just a wild time to think back of. A long time ago when Hagen was a young boy, as you once said. I went a lot sooner than that one, a little bit more recent, basically this last year. How about Philadelphia sports? Phillies had a good run, give them credit for getting to the World Series, but they lose to Houston in the World Series. And then the Eagles fall short to the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So that's your double whammy right there. But then on top of it, in the MLS, the Philadelphia Union lost in the MLS Cup final against Los Angeles FC. So make it a triple whammy just for fun to those old Philadelphia faithful. I'm sure they took all of that really well.
The first team to lose 3 consecutive championship games. The first team to lose 2 title games on the same day. Just, the pain. The pain. Yeah, but I'm sure there weren't anybody, trying to climb light poles or anything like that. Because we all know in the city of brotherly love, that doesn't happen. Not at all.
All right, who's your second pick?
I also went more recent than before. Another magical year, 1969. The last time before this year that the Yankees had a record of 69-69 at any point of the season. It was very nice, but beside the point. There were 2 teams in 2 cities, Baltimore and New York. And you think Baltimore, just the whistle stop, everything else. But they had great teams. They had Johnny Unitas. They had the vaunted, Bubba Smith and the Colts. They had Brooks Robinson and just fantastic pitching staff for the Orioles. What happened to that year? Well, it started off with someone's New York Jets and someone sitting by a pool in Miami making a guarantee. The Jets winning their only to-date Super Bowl title. Fast forward to the World Series. It's divisional play. Baltimore makes quick work of the Minnesota Twins in the first ever ALCS. No problem. They've got the World Series in the bag, right? The Amazons of the New York Mets had other thoughts. They're like, no, we're going to go ahead. We're going to take this World Series. Bring it back to our borough. Thank you very much. Try again next year. Baltimore did. So, Baltimore versus New York. Baltimore comes up with nothing twice.
And speaking of Baltimore, they trail 7-1 right now, bottom of the seventh, to the Texas Rangers, about to get eliminated from the ALDS. Just to add a little bit more insult to injury there. All right, third round for me. And again, I just didn't want to go with cities. I wanted to have a little bit of fun with it, and I found a good one. I went back again to my memory bank of games that I could remember, and I know Erik remembers these two games extremely well as well. How about wide right for the Florida State Seminoles? Back-to-back years in a marquee game against Erik's Miami Hurricanes. The first one coming all the way back in 1991. Number 1 Florida State against number 2 Miami at that time. Miami had the lead. Florida was looking for the game-winning field goal, 34-yarder, and they missed it wide right. The very next year, a little bit earlier on in the season, Miami now was the number 2 team in the country at 3-0. Florida State was the number 3 team in the country at 4-0. And again, Florida State with a chance to win the game with a field goal. I'm trying to remember how long the second one was. Was it 39 yards? Is that what I'm looking at here?
Around 40, thereabouts.
Yeah, right around there. About a 40-yard field goal. And again, they missed it wide right. Back-to-back seasons in this marquee matchup game. Both teams were fantastic. And they lose both by missing the field goal to the right side of the goalpost. And then, just for fun, they did it again in 2000. Not as marquee of a game, but still pretty hilarious.
And then a couple years later, there was wide left. The looks on Bobby Bowden's faces each time. Mwah. Chef's kiss.
All right, give me your last pick.
To appease Robert Taylor and his need for football, and to put things right in the universe, I praised Cleveland with my first pick. Sorry, I have to turn the tables. As much as this hurts, Bernie Kosar is involved, the man who continued the quarterback chain at the U. But we all know plays with big names. The Miami Miracle, the Hail Mary. But there's two that really stand out, especially amongst all the plays in Cleveland lore. Just years after Red Right 88, Cleveland back into the playoffs. Everybody thought this is finally the Browns' year. The 1986 AFC Championship game. Everything set up. You've got John Elway pinned deep. 5.5 minutes left. Get a bit, let him burn some clock, but then you get your stop. You're going to the Super Bowl. Then the drive happened. 98 yards straight down the field. Broncos win, get smacked in the Super Bowl. You think it's heartbreaking for Cleveland. They can't get over that. 1987 rolls around. They get back to the AFC Championship game. They have a hot start. 21-3. Everything's coming up Millhouse. Broncos come back. They come back. All of a sudden, okay, they're in the lead. But this time it's Cleveland driving. Everything is just fine. Kosar's doing his thing. They've got the ball. Ernest Biner goes up the middle and then fumbles. The fumble. Denver gets the ball back. They concede an intentional safety. Broncos back to the Super Bowl to get smacked again. I had to include those two momentous occasions in this pick. I was thinking about some others, but it's like, I can't forget this.
All right, there you go. That is our sports-related draft. Double whammies, double blunders, whatever you would like to go with it. Just double failures. My team is Leon Lett and his field goal blunder, along with the fumble return mistake that he had in the Super Bowl. I also went with this last year's Philadelphia Sports, losing in the World Series and the Super Bowl and the MLS Cup final, and Florida State in the 90s with back-to-back wide rights. For Erik, he went with the 1948 Boston baseball year as the Red Sox and Braves were unable to beat Cleveland that year. He went with Baltimore in 1969 as the Jets upset the Colts and the Mets upset the Orioles in those two championships. And then Cleveland with the drive and the fumble. Let us know in the comments, below, who wins this week's sports-related draft. It was a fun one. Real quick, while you guys do your votes, look at a couple of high school news here. High school girls soccer, Lewiston continues to have some offensive output. I still don't know if this is a typo from Hagen. He's the one that updates these. But Lewiston defeated LeGrand last Tuesday 6-0, and he says they had 57 shots on goal. It seems like a lot, but that's what he put in the notes, so that's what we're going to go with.
Okay.
Lewiston,
it seems like a lot, and it is, but it's not unprecedented. In 6-0 high school games, I've heard of stuff like that before. You just feel bad for the other goalkeeper.
Right. Lewiston also beat Post Falls 9-0. Avery Lathan had 5 goals in that game. Lewiston is at home today. I did not get a result from that just yet, but the winner against them and Lake City will get a berth into state. Clarkson 8-2-1 on the year, defeated Pullman 3-1 on Thursday, and they are taking on Rogers today. That game already concluded, but no updates there. They got to play at that cool new One Spokane stadium that they just built. Hagen was just up there to call the football game between Clarkson and Rogers last Friday, and he said it was a very awesome venue. We'll get more about that next week. LCSC News Cross Country will host their LC State Invitational. That starts at 10:30 on Saturday, and then for volleyball, they split their 2 games this weekend. They swept Evergreen State. For those who do not know, Erik, I'm not sure if you know, Evergreen State, their college nickname are the Gooey Ducks. It's the weirdest school I've ever seen.
No.
Yeah.
It's a trap. No.
And they have a mascot. You can see it online. The Gooey Ducks have a mascot. It's what you would expect. Erik's looking it up.
Yes, I am.
Well, he does that. The Warriors then did get swept by Northwest. Warriors right now 7th in the Cascade Conference. 8 teams will make the conference tournament, so they're sitting in there right now. See if they can finish it strong. And also, Kenzie Dean is in the top 5 for digs all-time in Warrior history. She's just 5 digs behind Lindsay Scott for 4th. 18 away from Tara Stoner for 3rd, and 32 behind her new head coach, Katie Palmer, who has 32 ahead of Kenzie. And then this weekend, LC back on the road. They will be at Bushnell on Friday, and then against the 5th team in the country, Corbin, on Saturday. And I have ruined Erik's life.
You did this on purpose.
Yep.
You knew that I'm trying to keep this as a family show. I made my promise. This is a dirty pool. Dirty pool, Isbell. Dirty pool.
I got to do what I got to do. All right, let's get into the NFL Power Rankings. I don't know if Taylor bailed on us or not. Nobody's voted in our sports-related draft yet, but it is time to talk about these Power Rankings. They are posted on the R&R Sports Report Facebook page, but I will make it clear, and I've not been home since she was able to get them to me. Kennedy did give me her blurbs earlier in the day on Monday. She failed at copy and pasting, apparently. She had her rankings done, but did not send them to me until Tuesday afternoon after they got posted. So it's 7 of us that have the rankings out, even though Kennedy does have her blurbs out. So Kennedy is not part of the rankings. I will insert her numbers into the database just for seasonal rankings when we can look at that stuff throughout the year, so we have the correct numbers. But the actual power rankings are out there, do not represent anything that Kennedy put out there. With that said, the 7 of us that gave us rankings this week all had San Francisco at number 1. We all had Philadelphia at number 2. And then we went all over the place, as expected. But the other 3 teams in our commutative top 5, Kansas City at 3, Miami at 4, Detroit sits at 5. Do you have any issues with any of those 5 teams?
I don't necessarily have issues. However, as I mentioned, with my teams that can potentially crater, Detroit is the team that, in my mind, can take the most advantage. I don't have them up quite that high just yet, but they are on the precipice. So the fact that they, even with me, wound up at number 5, I can see where everybody's thinking, where their heads are at.
Looking through some of the numbers, you were the only person out of the teams that finished in our top 5 that voted for any of those 5 teams outside of the top 6. You did have the Lions at 10. Other votes for teams that made our top 5 that were not in the top 5. Chris had the Chiefs at 6, and Zach had the Lions as well outside his top 5. He had them 6th as well. Erik, your team that you put in the top 5 that did not make it was the Buffalo Bills. You had them 4th. Zach also had them in the top 5 at 5th. And then Chris couldn't help himself. He put the Seattle Seahawks 4th in his list. So those are your other teams that got top 5 votes out of the 7 of us, but those are our top 5. Let's look at your biggest movers. And hilariously, all of the biggest movers went in one direction. They all went down. And I would have the PowerPoint stuff, but again, we were trying to get the technical stuff working in the studio, so I did not have time to update these. But the Tennessee Titans, off of their loss, they dropped down 7 spots. They go from 16 to 23. Thoughts on that?
Again, this is another team. Everybody came into the weekend in the AFC South at 2-2. Tennessee had the perfect advantage to strike, to go ahead, join Jacksonville at the top, but I'm sorry. I did not expect much from this Titans team. They are really proving me right, and we'll have to see how long Tannehill is really going to be out there the rest of this season.
Yeah, Tannehill, no touchdown passes in that 23-16 loss. He does have 1 interception. Running game for the Colts ran all over the place against the Tennessee defense. Obviously, we know about Anthony Richardson getting injured. Gardner Minshew continues to be a very solid backup for that team. Numbers for you for the Titans. Chris has them at the highest at 19. By the way, Titans again at 23 overall. He was the highest at 19. And then Erik, Sean, and Zach each had them at 21. Hagen had them at 23, Harry at 24, and me at 25. So pretty collectively agreed upon that they are in that bottom 4th of the league now. And I don't think any of us really have a lot of high hopes for them to turn their season around. An interesting one, how about the Baltimore Ravens? They dropped 5 spots. They were 6th. They drop all the way down to 11th in our power rankings after, even though PFF has Lamar Jackson as their top quarterback for some reason, they had no offense against Pittsburgh. That was a pretty ugly game. They lose that one 17-10. Erik, you had the Ravens drop all the way down to 13th. So your thoughts on this team?
This was a chance for them to really strike. Cincinnati coming on the up. Cleveland, good when everything is working, but we see them without Deshaun Watson, how vulnerable they are. This was your chance. But whenever you play Pittsburgh, no matter what, it's a close, tough, hard-fought game. But if you really want to be contenders again, you have to win those. And after you bottle up Kenny Pickett and everything after your putrid performance, to give up that touchdown to Pickens? No, I'm sorry. You're not that high up in my rankings.
3 of them had the Ravens still in their top 10. Hagen, of course, was the highest at 8, Sean at 9, and Zach at 10. 1 spot below the Ravens right now, the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah. Did I do that? Oh, that's supposed to be 7. All right, I'm looking at the notes wrong. Dallas also dropped 5 spots. They were 7th. They dropped to 12th. Again, Chris was the only one that barely dropped them, but he only dropped them 1 spot, had them at 22, did move them to 23. Erik, you still have them in the top 10 at 8, along with Zach. Harry has them at 9th. What do you see in Dallas that keeps them in the top 10 for now?
The fact of that against the teams that they should beat, like I had mentioned before against the Giants, the Cowboys have phenomenal performances. So again, they have better than expected against the teams that they should be at. Yes, the game against Arizona, that gave me a ding, but I did not expect them to have the best of games against this Niners team. I did not think it would be that bad, but I wasn't expecting this to be pretty. But again, they're another one of those teams right on the precipice. One more slip up, they can easily crater in my rankings.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last mover was the Green Bay Packers. They were 15th, dropped down to 20th. Once again, you are the highest out of the rankers this week. You had Green Bay at 16th. I had them at 19th. And then we're all over the place. Robert at 20, Harry at 21, Chris at 22, Zach at 23, and then Sean had them all the way down at 25. So we talked about it at the beginning of the show. Ugly game with the Raiders on Monday Night Football, but the Packers seem to be that team that we just can't put our finger on right now, and you kind of show that putting them 16th.
Yeah, when they're good, great. When they're bad, terrible. They are the epitome of mid in my mind right now. 16th couldn't be more perfect.
And then we look at the biggest spreads, and I don't know if Chris is still listening. If you are, this is me bringing you to attention that we're going to talk about your rankings, because in many of these, the biggest swing was between one Chris Picard and you, Sir Erik Watkins. Obviously, Dallas was the main one. You had them 8th, and there he is. And Chris had them 23rd, but that wasn't the only one. 15-spot difference for the Indianapolis Colts. Chris had them 12th. You still have them at 27th. And while I think Chris is a little high on the Colts, I would more side on Chris's side for Indianapolis than on your side, sir.
Outside of Anthony Richardson, okay, we've seen Moss. Jonathan Taylor's got his contract that is not steadily back yet. Tell me, what do they have?
That's enough. Michael Pittman Jr. is pretty good. The defense is sneaky good. I don't think they are top 5, but I think they're a top half defense.
Sneaky good at times, but again, okay, yes, they had that improbable, thanks to a no call on a penalty, win against Baltimore. We really shouldn't have had the performance that we had with Jacksonville against them. I'm sorry. Maybe they can go on a run and surprise me, but I'm not seeing anything special. Yes, as Chris said, they're winning games that we're supposed to lose. If they go ahead and beat us this week, I will give them their propers and shoot them up in the rankings. But I'm sorry. As much as we love Florida, man, to me, they're too vulnerable. And you're going to start to see who they really are as we go over the next 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, last 3 games all were one-possession games. They went 2-1 in that game. I think Jonathan Taylor coming back. Obviously, he did not have a big game last week, but he will kind of get things going. Him and Moss could be a fantastic 1-2 punch. Again, I'm not going to put them 12th. I had them 20th. So kind of right in the middle between you two. But I think that they're closer to that middle tier team than one of the 6 worst teams in the league. So that's where I go there. Cincinnati was an interesting one as well. We already talked about that and your belief that they are back and that they were going to be back. You've had them in the top 10 all year long. I joined you at 10. Sean still has them down at 22nd. So not exactly sure what he is still waiting on there, though Kristen had them 20th as well. Another one that is in there, and I don't know if Harry is done watching NXT and has joined us just yet, but New Orleans, you guys were 12 spots different, and I was against you on Indianapolis. I'm with you here. Harry has them all the way up at 11th. You had them down at 23rd. I'm with you. I had them 21st. They had a pretty good game this week. It was an impressive victory. I still do not believe it with Derek Carr. I was high on them coming into the season. I had the Saints winning the division, which I now would like to take back. But to me, they looked impressive, not because they're figuring it out, but because they're playing New England, who is completely imploded.
I mean, when you go ahead and you hand Bill Belichick his second worst loss as a head coach in as many weeks, yeah, you're not going to be bottom of the league, but you see who I have at the bottom of my power rankings. You're not that much better. You're just taking advantage of terrible opposition.
And then finally, the Seattle Seahawks have an 11-spot jump. And once again, it's between yourself and one Chris Picard. Chris has them as a top 5 team up there in 4th, which helped Seattle get into our top 10, moved up to the 8th spot. You still have them down at 15th. So what are you seeing that you're not quite believing in yet?
Another bit of mid. I mean, Geno Smith, comeback player of the year, still has things going. Kenneth Walker, great. They've got the connections, but it's a little bit more intangible. It's like I can spot exactly where something can go wrong with the Seahawks at any time. And I know game by game, they are very, very powerful. But over the course of the season, and with everything they've done this season, they're not doing anything overly terrible, but they're not doing anything overly impressive for me either.
That's fair. And I have them 8th. So I actually ended exactly where we have them ranked. They continue to impress me. I think the defense is playing really well. I really hope Jamal Adams can finally get healthy and stay healthy. The concussion was rough to see. As a Jets fan, I've always been a big fan of his. And then since the trade, he just has not been himself. A lot of it is to do with injuries. So I like the running game there. Obviously, they have a ton of weapons for Geno Smith to throw to. I think Seattle is a pretty good playoff contender there in the National Football Conference. So there you go. Those are some of our big swings in the rankings. We'll see what week 6 has in store for us. I think only 2 teams are on bye, so a lot of football to come, and we'll see what happens there. Real quick before we get into our football pick'ems and get into the high school and college for the week. News hit yesterday that was really interesting to me. Obviously, we knew baseball and softball were pretty much set to return. I think they're coming back this Olympic Games, right? Or is it still the next one? Maybe it was just
still for 2028
okay.
Because these are the times that they're deciding for the next Olympic program.
So this was just ones that baseball and softball just seemed like they were locked before, so they were already in my radar. So baseball, softball look like they're set to return. Other sports that they are looking at to add to the Olympic Games, cricket, which I'm starting to understand a little bit more about cricket. I still don't have enough crumpets to understand it completely. Lacrosse, which I'm for. I think lacrosse would be a lot of fun. Squash, which is that pickleball? Is that what squash is?
Not quite. Think of squash as pickleball, but instead of with the net and like tennis, up against a wall.
Okay. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. And then the one that blows my mind. They are thinking about adding flag football. Why?
I'm gonna tell you why. You look at, and these are the 3 that I'm mainly circling. Cricket. We saw what we had here in the United States with Major League Cricket, its first season, minor league cricket. And the IOC has said they want a format that can be compact, but also has a world championship. So if it is included, it's going to be T20. The games are 3 hours. The more you watch, easier to understand. India is already clamoring. Broadcast rights for the 2028 games could increase in price 8-fold. It's a very popular sport. Lacrosse, you just had the World Championships in San Diego. Huge international following, great sport. the Haudenosaunee Nation could be competing under their flag for the first time ever in the Olympics. And they'll be using the lacrosse sixes format. Much faster, much more compact. There's plenty of videos of games in it. PLL has a six-a-side tournament at the end of each season now. It's a very good watch. But flag football, it was recently added to the World Games, which were just held in Birmingham, Alabama last year. And for those who are unfamiliar with the World Games, it's like the Olympics, but for traditionally non-Olympic sports. With the growth internationally of gridiron football and the success and the big crowds in Birmingham in their main stadium for flag football games, all kinds of great international performances, I think that this is something that can catch on. And for those who are looking for a familiar name, who is going to be on the call for ESPN Deportes next week for the Spanish broadcast of the Chargers and Cowboys? Rebecca Linda. She was on the Mexican women's team that won gold in Birmingham in flag football. Don't necessarily count this out. This is part of a big effort, and don't be surprised if this sticks. I'd be curious as to which format, if they have what we saw in Birmingham with the 5v5 for compact games, or if we saw with what the American Flag Football League does with the full field. It's still something to watch, so don't quite knock it yet.
Okay, so a couple of takes from me. Squash is racquetball. That's what I learned when I looked it up. I flipped the sports when I was thinking about it, but I'm for that. I'm for racquetball. Flag football, I will only sign off on if the Americans come out with a dream team of Peyton Manning and Terrell Owens and Randy Moss, or some kind of weird connection up there. Then I will sign off on that. And by the way, that would bring in the ratings on top of it. I'm fine with the other sports. I think that's great. However, like squash or / racquetball, I want more individual sports. Like all of the stuff that we continue to add is very team based. I like when I tune on the Olympics, I'm looking for those cool individual moments. That's why track and field is so much fun. Gymnastics is a lot of fun. Gymnastics does have a team-based element to it, but you're out there competing yourself. Why in the wide world of sports has bowling not been added yet?
Okay.
Please, I'm so sick of all these other sports. Bowling is so international, it's crazy, but we cannot get bowling in the Olympics.
If they make it 5 pins, sign me up.
I
will die on that hill.
You can have 5 pin too. Well, you can bring 5 pin in, but bowling, go look at some of the best bowlers in the world. They're all over the place. They're all over the globe. Jason Beaumont from Australia, the greatest bowler of all time. There's some good bowlers in Japan. The PBA goes all over the world to get this sport recognition. Bring bowling to the Olympics. It would make sense.
Bowling also part of that same World Games program. So I'll stand behind you, but you have to have both disciplines for me. 10 pin and 5 pin.
As long as we don't have the stick bowling.
The candle pin? No. Forget candle pin.
I can't do it. All right, let's get into our pick'ems. Last week, Hagen, once again, this guy. I went 9-1 in high school and lost the game. Back-to-back weeks, Robert Hagen has gone 10-0 in his high school picks. Congratulations to him. We both went 6-4 in college. So I went 15-5. He went 16-4. So overall, once again, don't look at my NFL picks. They stink. But for high school and college, I'm 81-29.
If you want NFL picks, you can come to me. Last weekend aside, I've been pretty good this season. Let's ignore last week when I went 6-8. I'm still well above 500. I'm losing to Harry, but we're not talking about that right now. But I'm your guy.
And then Robert, 76-34, so I have a 5-game lead over him. I'll run through our high school picks real quick. Again, they will be posted on the Facebook page tomorrow. We won't get Erik to throw in his picks. He can put in his 2 cents if he wants, but just real quick, we'll run through these. 3-4 Lewiston is at, 2-5 Lake City, neither of these teams are going to make state unless they pull off some major upset in their season finale next week. But they have to win this week just to have a chance. Lake City's only 2 wins are against 2 rough teams with North Central and Moscow. I just don't believe in them. Give me the Lewiston Bengals, even though they just keep messing with my overall picks. Clarkson should take care of Pullman. They're at home. Pullman is still rebuilding that program. So give me the Bantams there. We try our best to come up with good matchups for high school, so we're just not taking cupcake wins and bolstering our wins. However, we like to take a Soton and Pomeroy because they're very local to us. They are both cupcake wins. Soton should roll over this Morton White Pass team, who's only 1-5 on the year, and Pomeroy, who's been an offensive powerhouse the last few weeks, is playing a really tough, really rough Tico Roselia team, who's 0-4, really having a tough year. So Pomeroy and a Soton for both of us. Those should be easy wins for us. Now we get to the really fun one, just kind of outside of our jurisdiction, but big for Lewiston as far as the Inland Empire League goes. Post Falls at Coeur d'Alene, both teams 5-2. Both teams looks like they could make the state tournament as long as they don't mess things up next week, but really trying to fight for seeding now. Coeur d'Alene has played the tougher schedule. They have the better defense. I've liked what I saw over these last few weeks as they've got more into league play. So Hagen and I will both take the Vikings there, though Hagen said it was more of a coin flip. A game that, Erik, I want you to watch. I'm sure it's on idahosports.com on Friday. I'll get you the time for it. I'll see if they do have a live stream. Again, I don't know if they have 8-man football in Florida. Football's too big where they're going to have crazy football. But in Idaho,
we have a handful of 8-man schools. We do.
In Idaho, we have to have 8-man football because we have a lot of small towns, but it creates some chaos. And this Kendrick Tiger team has been insane. Back-to-back state titles. Just don't lose. They keep playing up in class and dominating teams. They got a good one this week. They take on Grace. Kendrick 5-0, Grace 5-1. Grace, in their last 3 games, have outscored their opponents 184-7. For Kendrick, they beat Timberline last week 60-0 in a game that was called at halftime.
So let me clarify this, because I have seen some 8, 9-man, and even 6-man.
Mm-hmm.
The slaughter rule is 45 for Idaho, yes?
As far as running clock?
Or running clock, calling the game, what have you.
Running clock is 40 points. You're up by 40 points. They'll run the clock. This game got way out of hand, and Timberlake just went, we won't play the second half. And yeah. I believe it is on Idaho Sports. It is at 3 p.m. on Friday local time, so 6 p.m. for you. So I'll try to remind you to watch that game.
If you send me the link and remind me, I will find a way to watch that game.
It'll be a really, really good game. Both Robert and I take Kendrick because I'm never picking against the Tigers, ever. Good one between Timberlake, who's 4-3, and Lakeland, who is 3-4. Robert takes Timberlake in this one. I'm going to go with Lakeland, even though they started the year 3-0. They have lost their last 4 games. However, their 4 losses were against West Valley, Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and Sandpoint, either teams that are higher up in class or the top of their class. So I won't judge Lakeland too harshly. And by the way, Lakeland in the last 2 meetings with Timberlake have outscored them 105-8. So give me Lakeland there. Another really good one, Potlatch, who's 5-1, will go to Lapway, who's struggling on the record book. They're 3-3, but the Wildcats are one of those teams you will never count out. Lapway 3-0 at home, and they've won the last 3 meetings between these 2 teams. But Hagen and I will both take the Loggers from Potlatch. Couple of lower tier games that are just going to be fun to see how they go. Kellogg 2-5 at Grangeville 3-3. Hagen will take Grangeville. I'm going to go ahead and take Kellogg on the road. They've won the last 2 meetings between the 2. See if I can pull the upset there. And then we've had a couple of these. Somebody's got to finally win, though technically one of them has 1 win. Salmon River 0-6 at Timberline, who is 1-5. I'm going to take Timberline at home to get their 2nd win. Robert will take Salmon River to finally get their 1st win of the year. Again, all of those picks will be on the Facebook page tomorrow morning. And you'll see the couple picks we got different. And then we'll get Erik to watch this Kendrick team. They're insane. Kendrick football, Lapway basketball. Those are the two teams in our area that are just insane. All right, let's get into college. And now, Erik, get you involved here, get your picks. There is football going on right now that I just remembered about. So I was going to put those on the list, but they all started too early. Let me get you that scoreboard update. Middle Tennessee right now defeated Louisiana Tech 31-23. Liberty took care of Jacksonville State 31-13. And with under 5 minutes to go, it's a good one between Coastal Carolina and Appalachian State. They're both tied at 24. I love Tuesday Night Football, even though it's not even the MAC. And Sunbelt's getting a lot of action here, and Conference USA as well.
Hey, the group of five, they will bring the best action on weeknights. You'll love to see it. All right,
here we go. Wednesday football. Game that probably won't bring the best action, but UTEP is 1-5. Florida International is 3-3, but Florida International is only a 2-point favorite. I'm going to go with Florida International, as will Robert, as UTEP's only win was against Incarnate Word. Who do you got?
Give me Florida International in this one. They're fighting for respect in South Florida against Florida Atlantic. You should be beating a 1-5 team. And can we give a shout out to Incarnate Word? They have been mentioned for their football program more in the last 2-3 years than pretty much ever. So kudos for bringing tough schedules.
Made the FCS tournament last year. Definitely a team on the rise. Let's go to Thursday night football, 4 p.m. on FS1. It's 4-1 West Virginia at 2-3 Houston. West Virginia's a 3-point favorite. I'm going to go with West Virginia there. They have two common opponents, TCU and Texas. West Virginia beat them both. Houston lost to them both. Robert agrees.
And I'm going to make this another sweep. Houston, this is a team normally with their high-powered offense, but I see them struggling. West Virginia, knowing that maybe if the things go well, they could sneak in, make some more noise in the first season of the revamped Big 12, stamp their presence for after Texas and Oklahoma leave. Give me the Mountaineers.
All right, on Friday, 4 p.m. on ESPN, the Green Wave of Tulane. They're 4-1 against 4-1 Memphis. Tulane on the road, a 4.5-point favorite. I believe it's because of their rush defense, only giving up 86 yards per game. So I'm going to take Tulane. Robert disagrees, though he says just to be different. He took Memphis.
Now, I'm taking Memphis, but for a different reason. I'm not just going to be different here. I've seen a bit of both of these teams with Tulane. Yes, fantastic, almost Arizona Desert Swarm-esque rushing defense. But they've had some issues with injuries and things at quarterback. Even though they've taken big teams to the wire, Memphis, again, in the American, doing their thing, fairly local-ish. Give me the Tigers.
All right, let's get to Saturday. And to me, the game of the week, number 8, Oregon against number 7, Washington. Both teams are 5-0. This is a 12:30 p.m. start time on ABC. Huskies are a 3-point favorite. Just the quarterback matchup between these two. Look at these numbers. Bo Nix, 131 of 163. Only 32 incompletions on 163 attempts. Just shy of 1,500 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Michael Penix Jr., 133 of 178. He's a yard shy of 2,000 already. 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Who do you got and why?
I'm taking Washington, and you said the reason why. Michael Penix Jr., transfer from Indiana, setting the world on fire for Washington, and I'm telling you now, he and that Huskies program see this as a signature marquee game, and especially for Penix, this is the game that's going to help him propel a Heisman campaign. as well as Bo Nix has done, not just this season, but through his time at Oregon after transferring from Auburn, you had mentioned in your notes, this is their first real test.
Mhm.
I think Washington passes this one.
Yeah,
Oregon trips up.
As I said in our notes, Ducks have only given up 255 yards per game on defense, but they really haven't played anybody. People will point to Colorado. Colorado's not on this level. I mean, it's been proven already this year. It's a great story with Deion Sanders, but they are not on the Ducks level by any means. However, with that said, Robert and I will both take Oregon for the road slight upset there. Get through a couple of these real quick here. Texas A&M 4-2. They're at number 19 Tennessee, who's 4-1. Tennessee a 3.5-point favorite. Give me the Volunteers. Robert will take Texas A&M.
I've seen Texas A&M. I know what they can do. I've seen Tennessee. I know what they can do. Loving those checkered uniforms. Go Vols. A&M is too vulnerable.
Number 23 Kansas is on the road. They're 5-1 on the year. They take on Oklahoma State, who is 3-2. This is another 12:30 start time on FS1. Kansas a 3-point favorite, and a name that just jumped out off the page to me when I was doing my notes. Devin Neal, the running back for the Jayhawks. How about 77 carries for 593 yards and 6 touchdowns? For him alone, I'm taking Kansas, and Robert agrees.
Oklahoma State just is not doing it for me. It's something special going on in the Sunflower State. Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
Another really good one, number 10 USC, 6-0 on the year, at number 21 Notre Dame, who got upset by Louisville last week. They're 5-2. 4:30 p.m. on NBC. The Irish are a 3-point favorite. Who do you got?
Notre Dame. USC, despite Caleb Williams, had no business going to triple overtime against Arizona. Yes, Notre Dame losing to Louisville. Look what Jeff Brom is doing in Louisville. Give me the Irish. And please don't wear the green jerseys again. I love seeing them. I love seeing them before. Don't wear them for USC. Save them for another game.
I'm with you. Give me Notre Dame. Caleb Williams is doing everything he can to try to give the Trojans the win, but the defense is giving up over 420 yards per game. I can't see it. So you and I with Notre Dame. Robert will go with USC. All right, sir. It's number 25. Your Miami Hurricanes are 4-1 on the year. They're on the road against number 12 North Carolina, who's 5-0 on the year. 4:30 p.m. Pacific time start on ABC. Hagen and I'm sorry, going the Tar Heels.
You've gone against us before. You've gone against us before this season. Remember what happened?
Yep.
I'm not saying anymore.
Yeah, we also went against Georgia's Wyoming team last week, and that did not go well for us either. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, Erik takes Miami. Scoreboard update. Apologies to Denny Grubb. The Baltimore Orioles have been swept out of the playoffs. Texas wins it 7-1, and await the winners of Minnesota and Houston, which it will be Houston. In the ALCS, I believe that series starts on Saturday. It will be the ALCS. All right, 2 more games here on the docket, both on the West Coast. Number 18, UCLA, who's 4-1 against number 15, Oregon State, who's also 5-1. 5 p.m. on Fox. Oregon State a 4-point favorite. And UCLA, this is our 3rd straight ranked opponent. They're tired. Give me Oregon State. Hagen agrees.
Give me the Bruins. I mean, what better way to announce your presence and say goodbye, so long, thanks for all the fish in the Pac-12, than beating the 2 really dominant Pac-12 teams this season. So, give me UCLA. Do the double.
Beating the 2 teams that are still stuck in the Pac-12 or whatever the Pac-12 will be. And finally, in the big sky, the big one, Montana and Idaho. Both teams are 5-1. Obviously, no line because FCS lines come out later in the week. 7:30 p.m. on ESPN2. Give me Idaho.
I'm going to agree with you. For as good as the Grizz have historically been, The Vandals are showing making the move back down was the best thing for them. It's going to pay off in spades this season. Give me Idaho.
Hagan put in the notes that it's homecoming for Idaho. Do you care about homecoming for colleges?
Somewhat. I mean, it's a bit of a big deal, but I always see that more as a high school thing. When it comes to college, give me your big, like, senior night. Their last
Senior
game,
night to me is the big one.
that is the huge moment.
Yeah, LC has homecoming for their volleyball team next weekend. It's weird to me. Again, senior night is the more prestigious night to me. Real quick, go through some other news in sports. First for NFL, a lot of injuries to go through. Justin Jefferson hit the IR. He's going to miss at least 4 games. Like we said earlier, he could miss more than that. Davon Achane is going to be out multiple weeks. He has not been put on the IR yet. But there's a chance. Leighton Vander Esch for the Cowboys, Southern Idaho boy, is out 4 to 6 weeks with the neck strain. James Conner is out several weeks with knee injury. Hated seeing Matt Milano of Buffalo with his leg injury. He's going to need surgery, just another injury to the Bills that they absolutely do not need. And then Elijah Vera Tucker, we talked about, tore his Achilles, ends the season for the 2nd straight year in Denver. Out of all those injuries, obviously they're all rough. Obviously, the ones that are there for season ending are even worse. But what's going to make the biggest impact playoff wise from that list?
To me, it's Matt Milano. We have seen what the Bills defense can do when they are healthy and they have all their stars. We saw what they did when Von Miller was out last season. Milano stepping up, being that kind of heart and soul. It might be less of an impact, but out of all of these, I see this potentially haunting the Bills again.
And then there was a trade, as we talked about earlier. Atlanta traded for Van Jefferson from the Rams, and they swapped a couple of late 2025 picks. It's not an NBA trade, but we'll just say that. Those trades are nuts. In NASCAR, AJ Allmendinger, Haley's favorite driver just because of his name, he won at the Charlotte Roval. William Byron finished 2nd, Kyle Busch 3rd, Ty Gibbs 4th, and Joey Logano finished in 5th. That was an elimination race, so we said goodbye to Bubba Wallace, Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, and Brad Keselowski from the NASCAR playoffs. Though really in that race, I watched the last 20 laps or so. They were already decided. There was too much of a gap, and nobody that needed a win was near the top other than Kyle Busch, and he was 6 or 7 seconds back. He had no chance against AJ. So your final 8 drivers for the championship are William Byron, Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, Chris Buescher, Christopher Bell, Tyler Reddick, and Ryan Blaney. And your final 3 races here before we get to the championship 4 are Las Vegas, Homestead, and Martinsville. Eric, I know you're not as big into NASCAR, but out of those 8 drivers, who's winning the Cup?
I'm going to go with Martin Truex. He's one to where in the big races, he has those sneakier, closer finishes. And with these courses, especially Homestead, that's where Truex is really going to show out. So give me Truex Jr. to win the Cup.
Absolutely. All right, look ahead at the rest of this week. You conclude the ALDS and NLDSs, and then the championship series will start this weekend. Thursday night football, you can skip. It's Denver at Kansas City. It's going to be a blowout. Robert Taylor's going to talk a lot of trash. Sunday night football, you can skip. It's the Giants against Buffalo. It's going to be an ugly game. Harry and Kennedy are going to talk a lot of crap. And then you get a good one. Monday Night Football, Dallas at the Chargers. So there you go. It's a college football weekend for me. I think there's going to be a lot of better action for college football. Try to maybe get into some hockey this weekend because of it. Do we have a score yet in the Kraken game?
Not yet. Tip-off is in about 10 minutes. Congrats.
They pushed it way back.
Blackhawks, 4-2 win against the Penguins. For that one, it had a thrilling third period finish.
There you go. So they have pushed back the Kraken for me so I can get something to eat, sit down, and watch that game. That is going to do it for another edition of the R&R Sport Report. I would love to once again thank Erik Watkins for joining us on this show. He has been such a big part of this, whether being a guest host when we need him or just being in the comments having a lot of fun. Don't worry, Eric. I will give our draft to Robert Hagan, and he we'll decide who won this week's sports-related draft. I'll announce it next week on the show. Don't forget, we'll be back in studio on Tuesday. Hagen will be back. We'll have a normal show next Tuesday and the weekend after that. And then the week of Halloween, we're going to do a special Monday night show, most likely after Monday Night Football. And I would believe it's only going to be like an hour. We're not going to go a full show there, but we want to get on, talk some football with you guys, and have a bit of fun. So that is going to do it for another episode here. I'm going to go throw this monitor in the trash as I broke it setting up today. I'm very sad about my clumsiness. It's devastating completely. It's making me just, it's been a rough week. Real quick, just as a touching note, there's been a lot of people reaching out to me, and I thank them very much. We lost my ex-wife on Saturday morning, my son's mom. So we're all kind of going through all of that. So again, I want to thank everybody out there who has been reaching out to all of us for that, especially the Lewiston High School District. I've known Kevin Driscoll, the principal over there, for several years, working with him. He personally reached out to me on Sunday to see how Chase was doing. His coach for cross country has also reached out and checked in on him and made sure that he got the help that he needs from counselors and all that. So again, I got a ton of messages over these last few days, and I very much appreciate it, though all the well wishes needs to go more towards my son. His sister Zoe has lost her mom. I can't imagine what they've gone through. And then, of course, Teresa, who not only lost her oldest daughter this weekend, but she had lost her husband a few weeks ago. And then Katie, who lost a sister and a dad over those same couple of months. Heart goes out to them for their loss. I'm okay dealing through all that stuff. I just more care about what those guys are going through and want to be there for them. So again, thank you to all the well wishes out there for sure.
Especially Chase. I've been seeing your dad's been good about posting your cross country exploits this season. Run the rest of this year for your mama. She's going to be looking down and smiling just as much as he is watching you right here.
I appreciate Eric and appreciate everyone else. That will do it for the R&R Sports Report. We will be back on Tuesday with Hagen back in studio. Take care.